Good morning, everybody. This is Dylan Greenwood.
This is Attorney Harold Eustache.
And today with us, we've got Judge Mary Covington out of Davie and Davidson counties. She's a district court judge down there, and we're going to be talking about a very important issue all around the nation right now. And it's centered around what's come out on Netflix lately, and that's been the movie Cuties. And it's really prompted a lot of discussion around the nation with a lot of things that have been going on with issues of technology, social media, and how our young people are handling that as they are growing up. But before we start today's program, because those are some sensitive issues, we just wanted to give a disclaimer to everyone out there that this show will include some sensitive information, and for our young people out there, it may not be appropriate for them to listen to. That being said, though, we do feel that these are subjects that are of the utmost importance for any parent or prospective parent to be made aware. So,
That's right.
Well, Judge, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And you're the juvenile specialist down in Davie and Davidson counties, right?
Maybe not but I am one of the juvenile specialists that presides mainly over juvenile matters. In fact, I'm getting ready to do another a full 2-month rotation into matters for abuse, neglect, and dependency cases. So I'll be spending a lot of time in foster care court. So.
And it's something that's a particular passion of yours, correct?
It is. It is. They're our future. I can't even imagine what our future is going to look like if we move forward in the state that our children are currently in the phase of life that our kids are in, and the lack of really true good education as far as life skills and morals and ethics. So yeah, I want to be a part of that, and I want to make sure that they're informed.
Well, again, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
And Harold, you've been involved with juvenile stuff throughout your legal career too, as well, haven't you?
I have. When I was a assistant district attorney here in Forsyth County, and also in Rockingham County as well, I prosecuted cases in juvenile court. And in juvenile court, it's obviously a little bit different for the DAs, for the defense attorneys and judges. You're there to deal with the criminal matters, but also to help the juvenile get through that process and become, hopefully, on the other end, a better individual and better citizen in society. So, Judge, I have a question for you.
Yes.
For our viewers that don't know, how does a case get into juvenile court?
Okay, so initially there would be a typical law enforcement phone call, or from the school, a call for help. If there's an issue with breaking the law, maybe a disorderly conduct or a fray, which is a fight. Kids get into fights. Or, unfortunately, we get all kinds. In North Carolina, the law says anywhere from the age of 6 up to now 18. As you know, the law just changed last December. So it's now up to 18. And those are matters for murder, rape, drug trafficking, sex offenses, assaults, right down to little simple things like driving without a license or taking a car. So they get into court when someone calls for help, law enforcement begins their investigation. Then from there is a very specific process in the statute that requires them to go through the juvenile system, to go through the juvenile probation officers, who then decide whether or not they're actually going to draw a petition. And as you remember, it's a completely different language.
It is.
They're not charges, it's a petition. You're not found guilty, you're adjudicated.
Right.
You're not sentenced, you receive a disposition. So it's a whole different other language, needs a whole other dictionary.
And juveniles, they don't just go through our judicial system as on that end of it, they're also frequently victims as well.
Oh, absolutely. And they don't even realize that they're victims.
Right.
You know, that's the heartbreaking part of it.
And I think that's what plays into a lot with this movie that's on Netflix, Cuties, and the girls in it that are portrayed. And yes, there are some scenes where they're doing some rather provocative dance moves, stuff that you could easily see down at your local strip club, albeit they're keeping their clothes on. But this type of behavior that they're emulating, especially at a young age, I believe the girls were 11 in that movie, and it getting out on social media and everything else, it just leads to a litany of issues.
It just opens the door for all kinds of issues.
So how are ways that you've seen, especially in this type of sphere, that children become victims?
That's a broad question.
No.
Well, as you know, because I sent you the PowerPoint, my colleague, Rob Taylor, who's our special prosecutor down in Davidson County, in Davie County, who deals with mainly sex offense cases.
Yeah, we have a few with him.
Do
we
you?
do, yes.
You've been, he has, he began kind of speaking in schools, and then early on, it's been probably 10, 12 years now, he and I are going into all the schools in Davidson and Davie County that invite us, all middle schools, because elementary school still maybe a little bit young, although that's the parents' job.
Right.
And then once we get a hold of them, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, or 7th, 8th, 9th grade, we are speaking to them about sexting, the dangers of social media, advertisement, and how it's geared towards sex. We are literally opening their eyes to what could happen if they have this stuff on their phone. Their mouths drop open. They're like, what? Are you kidding? But in addition to that, all these laws were created originally because overseas, it is a wide open billion-dollar market to traffic children.
Right.
And so the United States got a hold of this many, many years ago and decided, hey, we're going to get ahead of the game. So they began these laws about pedophilia. They began the laws, they started the laws to stop men from being able to marry young kids and things like that. And that's a religious thing, and I get that. It's certainly a crime in North Carolina, and it's a federal crime. So when other countries weren't protecting and still aren't protecting their children, the United States did, and we decided to do that. So we are teaching these kids that this is about stopping the flow of ideas that, unfortunately, perverts are men and even some women, but it is generally a male-dominated situation, to prevent them from being victims. So we go into the schools and say, hey, we want to teach you this so that you're not going to be a victim of trafficking, of kidnapping. And I can't even tell you the number of cases that we have had where, even just as recently as a few years ago in Davie County, where a girl met a guy online. He was a 16-year-old boy. He begins talking to her. She's a 16-year-old, or 15, actually, no, I want to say she was probably 13 or 14 years old. She's talking, oh, hey, posed as a 14-year-old girl first. Hey, how's it going? I saw you were online. How old are you? I'm this old. She wasn't getting enough attention from her parents. She wasn't really being monitored, which is all what it goes back to, parental monitoring. She begins this conversation. Oh, you're so cute. My brother thinks you're cute too. Being sucked into this world of, we care about you even if your family doesn't care about you. We want to know more about you. Then it turned into, hey, my dad's here. He wants to say, hey. All along, it was this 40-something-year-old man talking to her.
Because you just don't know who you're talking to.
He was grooming her.
Yeah.
These kids don't get that. And so when she ended up meeting the guy, being kidnapped, taken to multiple hotel rooms in multiple places, and raped multiple times. He is still in prison, thankfully, because Rob Taylor took care of that. But it was started off as an innocent conversation.
Sure.
So yeah, the door is open when they begin that. So we go into these schools and we try to say, hey, look, I don't know what you understand about this, but let me tell you what's going on in real life.
Well, Judge, I think you touched on a lot of important points, and points that I think get talked about in the movie Cuties.
Right.
And you've seen it.
Oh yeah.
You've seen it.
And I think,
I've seen it. And it is, I know it's been criticized a lot and everything, but I think it was the filmmakers' attempt to bring a lot of these issues to light. And it is an absolutely uncomfortable movie.
Yeah.
It is,
sure.
you see some things and you're just like, man, that just doesn't sit well with me.
He may have wanted to bring it to light, but he victimized the girls that acted in it.
Well, and that is
that's what's
it's
sad.
a valid point. I do know that monitors from the French government were on set during the whole time. Counselors were on set during the whole time. So there was that they were able to consult with, but
Were they counseling them on how to twerk, or were they counseling on that would be
fair
inappropriate?
fair question. But there are a lot of these themes that are touched on in the movie about absentee parents.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, absentee parenting, which the judge touched on, and the access to social media and phones, because the reality is, 11-year-olds right now in the United States and all over the world have access to these little phones that give them access to all sorts of stuff. And I think the movie touches on that, how do these young preteen people with access to cell phones, the same cell phones we all have, how do they navigate finding themselves, and how does that work in this kind of world where they have so much access?
right.
Well, and think about it. They weren't like that. Flip phones didn't have all that stuff back in the day. When I didn't get one till I was, I don't know, way older than I am, way younger than I am now, but not certainly a teenager. But when you had kids growing up, I mean, you guys are both young. You may have had a phone early on, but it wasn't
Not till I was
internet
driving.
access. But it
That-
wasn't internet access.
No.
No,
I mean, now
not
you've
like
got
it
a
is.
whole computer in your hand
Right.
that knows exactly where you are, can tell the weather that is going around you when you open the phone, can tell the spot that you are in when you take a selfie in front of the mirror. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, when you're taking that selfie, a lot of times it is to post on social media, and social media is so easy to access on a smartphone. Yeah, you get asked a few disclaimer questions. You have to represent that maybe you're a certain age or that you have certain permissions to do it. How hard is it to click
Oh,
a
yeah.
button
Oh,
differently?
yeah.
It's not. And so then you get on there,
But
and
I've seen parents that actually set up the accounts for them.
And so
and lie
that's
about
just
their
fraught
age.
with so many dangers.
So many dangers.
And especially for a young person, the little girls in the movie were like 10, 11, and at that age, you're just beginning to figure out who you are. So you're at the age where you know enough that you can do things, but you're not old enough to know the full consequences.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the difficult
Well, and your
part.
body's changing physically
Right?
Sure.
and mentally,
Right.
hormonally, everything.
But the mental aspect of it is huge. You get on social media, and what are you trying to get? You're trying to get comments. You're trying to get likes. You're trying to get people to love your stuff, to care about it.
You're
there are all
trying
these
to get attention.
right. And under the wrong set of circumstances, without proper parental guidance, it's easy for all of a sudden that's how you determine your self-worth.
Right.
And I think you saw
You're
that.
exactly right.
I think you saw that a lot in the movie, because as soon as the little girl that centers gets a phone and she gets on social media, it's the first thing that she does. And she's posting something that all of a sudden across her screen is just filled with likes and hearts and all this stuff. Her face lights up. And her face lights up because all this point, they're immigrants from Somalia coming into Paris. She doesn't know a lot of people, and
She's been very sheltered.
she's an extremely conservative family, a particularly conservative Muslim family, where she sees her mom just be beat down by her setup, where all of a sudden her father has decided to take on a second wife, and she has to watch her mom basically just deal with it
and be a single parent.
and be a single
Yep.
parent and
So
get
you've already
through it.
lost the respect of the parent from the child.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that religion, if that's their religion, that's fine. Whatever it is. But then you've got these issues where the mom obviously catches her daughter stealing from her and just walks away. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything about it. Instead of sitting down and addressing it and saying, you know what, you're going through a lot of stuff right now. We've just made this huge shift to another country. Why are you doing this? What is leading to this? It's, trying to understand. And I think that complete lack of care and absenteeism is so palpable in the movie. Because then there's another scene where the mom passes out on the kitchen floor. And the little boy rushes to her. Her younger brother rushes to her. The girl just sits there
Yeah, flat affect, just completely.
eating her food.
Yep.
Doesn't care one bit. And so all of a sudden, she's left in this world, in this situation where the people she sees that are popular, getting attention, are the ones that are just putting all the goods out there, even as an 11-year-old. I mean, they're wearing scantily they're scantily clad, they're not acting a certain way, they're doing all these really risky behaviors. And instead of it, I will, to the film's credit, I will say this: those girls in that group are not glorified. In that movie, the way it's portrayed, the way it's shot, I will say that it is portrayed as a pit of quicksand.
Kind of a sad thing. Yeah.
A sad thing. Every time they go deeper, worse things happen. Deeper and deeper and deeper. Until finally, there's a moment in the movie, I won't give it away for everybody out there if you're going to watch it, that the little girl that centers on kind of ramps it up an extra step and posts something that's very, very, very risque, and would be a violation of a lot of these laws. And the group of girls just totally rebukes her. Said, "No, you've gone too far. This is too far. We're not SULTS. We're just sassy." And that's an exact quote from the movie. But obviously, they do these dangerous behaviors throughout the whole entire movie. Dangerous, and it gets filmed and it's all put out there. And there are some interesting images in the movie, to say the least.
No, there really are. And there's been a lot of talk around whether or not watching this movie is a violation of our own laws in North Carolina and in the United States. And so I guess the question is, and the question we've gotten is watching this movie a violation of any child pornography or any sort of statute here in North Carolina that you can think of?
Not that I can think of. And I mean, just reasonably, Netflix isn't going to put something out there to all of a sudden be clamped on down by the United States government or anybody else. Does it toe the line?
I think that it would have been prevented to be released in the first place if it was that, pornographic.
But it absolutely toes a line. And in North Carolina, so these types of issues, and it's under a sexual exploitation of a minor act. You've got it at the state level, you've got it at the federal level, and you can be charged and convicted under both because we are a dual sovereignty nation, and that's just how it works. You can be convicted under the state of North Carolina's laws, and then you can turn around and be convicted with the federal government. Now, does that usually happen? No, but you can be. And in both sets of laws, you've got a situation where a film, a photograph, negative slide, any kind of visual depiction has to depict some type of intercourse, a sexual act, the genitalia, the other sexual parts, whatever it may be. That is more of what this is geared to.
So the picture of somebody's grandchild in the tub doesn't count.
No, that's the thing that kind of all the kids always freak about when we're talking in classes with them. What do you mean? They're going to baby picture me naked in the bathroom.
Right.
My parents have pornography? No. Let's make this perfectly clear.
Right.
Because there's a purpose behind the photo.
Right.
The purpose behind the photo is what draws in the intent of the person that's taking the picture.
Right.
That's not for sexual purposes. That's my baby. She's adorable, cute, whatever. But when there's an intentional act done in order to bring about to make it of a sexual nature, that's when it is obscene. So the funny thing is that I'm sure y'all remember this back in law school where we learned about obscenity, obscene. Well, basically, it's whatever the court says it is.
Right.
All right? So, and this is what I tell these kids when I'm talking to them. If you've got a bunch of old fuddy-duddies up on the bench and your case is in front of them and you don't think it's any big deal because you're desensitized because of what we see on TV or what we allow our kids to see, oh, it's no big deal. That's not that big of a deal. You get some old fuddy-duddy up there that says, I am appalled at what I'm seeing. They're going to consider it obscene and they may deem it obscene, Yeah. And so when it goes to that, that's where you would see. Now, do I think some of the stuff in this film is obscene? Absolutely. I'm not the judge and jury over that movie, so that's good for them.
Yeah. and that's the thing. And you're looking at it and you're trying to figure out if it's obscene. And at a state court level, it's a felonious act. It ranges from a Class H all the way up to a Class C felony. And then it also, like I said, has those federal implications where if you only possess it, it's a certain sentence. But then if you're distributing it, then all of a sudden, and distributing is sending or receiving. And usually that's typically through the internet. and that is the absolute most common. But we've had some cases, Harold, where we've seen people physically trading this type of material.
Not just about adults trading.
Now you're right.
Right.
You're
Josh,
right.
you
Kids,
mentioned-
because you can exploit yourself if you're a child. There's no protection in the law. It doesn't say, oh, unless it's you taking the picture.
Can you talk
Right.
about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, North Carolina is one of the few states that absolutely says in the law or interprets the statute that says it doesn't matter if you're the one taking the picture. If you are under the age of majority, you are taking a photo of, and it doesn't even have to be naked. It could just be partially naked. And you're taking a photo and then you send it to somebody, especially if your little brother who's well under the age gets the photo, you've just committed 4 different felonies right in that one act.
Oh yeah.
But it's just me. It's just a picture of me. I should be able to do whatever I want. That's what I sometimes get from the kids in schools. No, wrong. You can't. That's why that thing that you have, that computer that you hold,
You get you in big
can
trouble.
be the most dangerous
Absolutely.
thing that can ruin your world if you're not properly monitored or at a minimum taught about it.
Dylan,
Right.
wasn't there a case out of Cumberland County that
Yes.
Sure was.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about that?
A high school quarterback with his
Cheerleader of the
girlfriend.
captain,
Yeah.
captain of the cheerleading team.
Classic dating pair, right? And they're both 16, 17, and they were sexting back and forth. And Cumberland DA's office, absolutely, they landed both of them with
Well, it's
felonies.
because they had so many other issues in the school. So they're basically going to take these 2 kids,
Make an
star
example.
athletes,
Make an
Yeah.
example.
honor students, and made them examples. I mean, they lost scholarships. They don't even understand. That's the consequences of their actions and their steps that they took. They don't get how far reaching the effects, not just immediate
I know.
consequences, but we're talking
Big
about
time.
'Cause-
psychological, but educationally.
But not just that. In the digital age, that media stays
It
out
ain't
there
never going away.
forever. It's
right.
not
And
going
for
away.
For parents out there, what exactly were those kids? I mean, you said the high school quarterback and cheerleader, or what were they charged? I mean, why were they charged?
Well, they
what
were charged
exactly
because
did they
had,
do?
well, they were. It was a consensual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Those photos did not go anywhere else. But somehow, because I don't know the basis of how it got out, I think one of
Well-
the parents got a hold of the phone, began to see
Yeah.
these photos. Is there something different that you know?
No, that's what I understood too. But then you've got issues of production that are there.
Producing.
You've got issues of distribution, and then you've got issues of possession. And we had, we were telling you that we had 6 of these cases last year
Yes.
alone. That people walking our door, thankfully they had their parents with them, but a lot of times, the parents weren't necessarily fully educated, and then we started educating.
Oh, yeah.
And we start going, well, this can be a federal case. And you know what? You're the one taking the pictures. You're hitting that button to record. All of a sudden, that's production. You know what happens production in federal crime? 15-year mandatory minimum sentence. If you're caught distributing it, so you sent it, you sent that text message or you sent that picture to someone else, distribution, mandatory minimum, 5-year sentence. And then you don't even get it. So obviously jaws hit the floor at that point.
Yep.
And then you go, you know what, on top of that, whenever you do get out, it's sex offender registry time.
Right.
Yep. And that includes juveniles.
That does.
Juveniles can be ordered to register as sex offenders. So one of the things I'm teaching them when I'm in these schools, I'm like, what do you guys think? I mean, we've got hundreds of kids. What do you guys think of when you hear the word sex offender? And they're like, kind of old man, old pervert dude. I'm like, yeah, you do. Do you realize that your photo could be up on the sex offender registry as well? Because the courts have the discretion to make you register as a sex offender if your behavior continues on this path of destruction with being involved with pornographic information and obscene material.
And the bad thing is, and we've been involved with a few of these cases, albeit on the adult side, but what happens when the relationship goes south? And then all of a sudden, there's all this ammunition out
Hey
there.
dudes, look what I got.
Right. And that becomes a revenge porn issue.
Yep.
And Harold, do you want to touch on that a
Yeah,
little bit?
one revenge porn. These statutes have kind of cropped up all over the country over the last decade or two, and essentially what they are is to say if you have let's say you're in a relationship with somebody, and they send you an adult sends you a picture that is let's say it's a nude picture or something like that, and the relationship goes south. and then you take that picture and then you send it to any third party. And a lot of times people think it has to be posted on social media. It doesn't. It could be to your friends in a group chat or whatever for the purpose to embarrass somebody else. It can be charged as a felony revenge porn. And part of the reason for that was because of what was happening on social media. People were getting into these relationships, relationship collapses, and they want to embarrass the other person, and they post something about a picture of that person that they think would be embarrassing. Well, North Carolina has really cracked down on that, and so for people over the age of 18, it's a felony, and for people under the age of 18, it's a misdemeanor. But it still can be a very serious crime, and I've seen it definitely prosecuted in multiple counties here in North Carolina. It's something that officers take seriously and DA's office take seriously.
Well, one of the things that we don't really talk about is, there's not really a law for bullying, okay?
Right.
It's not against the law to be a jerk, right?
Right.
So I tell people in court all the time, when I deny their 50C. Not against the law if you don't like your neighbor to be a jerk. However, part of the revenge porn was, kind of jumped up off of this bullying because we had so many suicides in our high schools when other kids were posting these photos everywhere.
Right.
You gotta watch what you do.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
So, Judge Covington, with all this talk about cell phones and sexting and social media, are there any suggestions you would have out there for parents that are just trying to wrap their head around all this?
You have the right to stalk your child. You have a right to search their phone. You don't need a search warrant. You pay that bill and you be the parent. They don't need a friend. They need a parent. And more children thrive with structure. I don't care what they want. You've got to give them what they need. And what they need is a parent that is going to watch and monitor what they're putting in their eyes, that's going into their brain, it's coming out of their mouth. It changes them the more they are exposed to really questionable things. What do you do when you have a parent that's already questionable? I do the best that I can, but they end up in front of me, unfortunately. So I do my best to help that child be shaped in a better direction and send them down the right path in the future.
Well, Judge, great words of wisdom there, I think, for everybody out there, and we really appreciate you coming and joining
Honored
our
to
show
be here.
today.
Thank y'all so much. I enjoyed it.
No,
Thank
it
you.
was our honor and our pleasure. And everyone out there, don't forget to join us next Sunday at 10:30 a.m. here on WTOB for another For the Record with Greenwood Law. Harold, did you hear about that young man in Louisiana who got suspended for having a BB gun in the background of his Zoom call for school?
I did, and next week we're going to be talking about all the issues around virtual learning and how parents and teachers and all of us need to understand the legal issues around that. It's an interesting time.
Yeah, you got two boys going through it right now, don't you?
I do.
It's been quite a roller coaster.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, before we go, everybody, don't forget the Greenwood Law Bill of Rights, and that's first and foremost, I will not represent myself in court. Secondly, I will not do law enforcement's job for them. 3, I will not make statements when stopped by law enforcement. 4, I will not consent to searches when asked by law enforcement. And 5, I will not be my own star witness for the prosecution. And remember, everyone, it's not a crime to know your rights. Stay informed out there. Get up to date on everything. Know what your children are up to. It's going to help out in the long run. It's for their benefit. This is For the Record with Greenwood Law, signing off.